Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a quantitative specialist here at Statistics Solutions. During today's webinar, we are going to review some steps for preparing for a quantitative defense. Some tips I'll give will apply to qualitative and mixed methods as well, but we'll be looking at some quantitative examples specifically. My colleague Sierra is going to put some hyperlinks in the chat box for scheduling consultations and checking out our website. We'll send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the webinar as well. And if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will do a Q&A session at the end. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So first, I'll give a brief overview of the services we provided our company. Then we'll look at steps to prepare for a defense. I'll go through a couple examples, a proposal defense and a final defense. We'll conclude with a summary and a question and answer session. So these are all the different components that we assist with at our company for dissertation development or a thesis as well. So starting with topic development, going all the way to final defense and all the chapters in between. We have methodologists, quantitative and qualitative, and we have content literature review specialists. So no matter where you are in the process, we do have specialists that can assist with you. So if you need help framing your research questions, pinpointing a research design, figuring out what is the best statistical analysis to address your hypotheses, we can assist you there. We can even crunch the numbers for you in SPSS and provide an APA write-up. And then we assist with PowerPoints, which is what we're reviewing today. So we can assist you with developing your PowerPoint and going through mock defenses. And then we can help condense your dissertation into journals. So if you have any questions about the services, you can give us a call at this number, 727-442-4290. And on this slide, you can view the past webinars we've done. We have recordings on our website at the webinar archive, and you can see what webinars we're doing in the future. All right, so we're looking at the proposal and final defense. Some schools do both. Some schools only do a final defense, so it depends where you go to school. The proposal defense involves providing a summary of the proposal chapters. So usually this involves, and assuming we're following a 5-chapter dissertation format, this will include the introduction, the lit review, and the methodology. So the point of this is you want to summarize the takeaways from these chapters. The primary focus is justifying why the study is being conducted in the first place. So pinpointing a gap in the literature, what is the problem to be addressed, and then a bulk of it will be explaining the methodology for the proposed study. So what are your research questions? How are you planning on collecting data? What is the minimum sample size you need to target? What analyses are you going to use to address your research questions and hypotheses? Then once you get to the final defense, you're going to condense the information for these 3 chapters, the intro, the lit review, and the methodology, but then you need to incorporate the results and the discussion. So like I said here, a lot of the information from your proposal defense is going to be retained, but it needs to be condensed and shifted to past tense because the study has been conducted at this point. And the primary focus will be summarizing your quantitative or qualitative results for the study. And what are the implications of these findings? What does it mean for your field? How does it change, or how does it align to previous literature? And then you want to give recommendations for future studies. Okay, so in terms of preparation, some tips I would give is ask your school for a template for the proposal and final defense. Almost every school is going to have a template that will show you what needs to go on each slide. Note if there's going to be a minimum or maximum slide count. In my experience, the average presentation ranges between 20 and 30 slides, but it can't be generalized to every presentation. Some go far beyond that. Some are only 10 slides. So it really depends on how many research questions you have and what the template is for your school. Also note if there's an estimated length for the presentation. Most range between 20 and 30 minutes, but I have seen some schools request that it goes up to 45 minutes. And then you have to keep in mind there may be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation in which your committee will give you questions about your topic. And then you can request for approved examples from your committee. So students that have already gone through the defense process, ask for examples that have been approved in the past. That way you can mirror the same presentation. And then ask your committee what types of questions to anticipate. Know if they're going to ask those questions in the middle of the presentation or at the end. And most presentations today, most defenses are done remotely through Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meet. So my suggestion would be use multiple monitors so you can have your presentation on one screen and maybe notes and your dissertation on a second screen. You can consider printing out your entire dissertation and then highlighting key points that you want to discuss, and have a summary of talking points ready to go. You'll want to test out the logistics of the software prior to your defense, maybe do a mock presentation with your committee or any friends or colleagues. If you're presenting in person, this is a little more rare, but it still does happen sometimes. You'll want to familiarize yourself with what software you're using, if it's PowerPoint or a different software. Keep in mind you may be using a projector, USB, and HDMI cables. So here's a sample template for a proposal defense. You can see what I've highlighted for the proposal defense. It goes from the problem statement up to how are you analyzing your data. Final defense has the same bullet points, but it's incorporating these final two bullets: research results and then implications and the conclusion. This should apply to most dissertations, but your school may have more specific headings that they want you to use or more specific slide titles. And looking specifically at the method slides, what do we need to present here? So for the proposal defense, which is chapters 1 through 3, you need to provide your research questions and hypotheses. You want to summarize the research design, and you want to justify. A lot of the methodology comes to justifying decisions. So you want to say, hey, I'm using a quantitative correlational design. Why was quantitative appropriate and why is correlational appropriate? So quantitative, if everything's numeric and you're planning to use statistics, then quantitative is the best approach. Correlational is usually looking at Pearson or Spearman correlations, looking at two-way relationships. So having definitions in your back pocket will be. Then you want to define your population in the sample. So who is the greater population? Who are you generalizing the findings to? And then specifically from the population, what are the sample? Who is the sample? Where is it being derived? Are you using random sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling? And then you want to provide a minimum sample size target. There's many ways to do that. I see a lot of universities are using G-Power now to calculate a minimum sample size target. So you can put the findings for that power analysis in the presentation, or you can use an online sample size calculator. Then you want to go through the data collection procedures. This is a fairly big bullet point here. You want to think of it like a recipe from step A to step Z. So someone else could replicate the same data collection that you are doing. So within there, think about obtaining IRB permission, obtaining permission to use the instruments in your study. What is the platform you're using to collect data? If it's SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics, or maybe you're using archival data or doing a survey in person. And then explaining how you're going to extract the data once data collection is closed. Then you want to describe your instrumentation. If you're using previously validated surveys, you want to provide a citation for that, maybe give some reliability and validity information to justify using those tools. And if you're using archival data, maybe providing the website from which you are gathering that data, uh, giving some background information. Where has it been used in the past? Has it been validated for accuracy? And then you want to go into the data analysis procedures. So how is each research question or hypothesis going to be analyzed statistically? So you would go through, to address research question one, we're going to use a multiple linear regression. These are the assumptions we're going to check, and this is how the regression will be interpreted. Okay, so then assuming we're doing a final defense now, what do you present on the results slide? If you have a demographic table, I would recommend just copying and pasting the table directly into the presentation. Tables are great for the final defense, tables and figures, and then having talking points or bullets to discuss them. For the demographics, you want to briefly summarize the trends of your demographics. What was the predominant gender, race, ethnicity, education level, that sort of thing, and discuss how the numbers align with the greater population. Then you would present descriptive statistics for the variables of interest in your study. So any variables that were part of your research questions. Within here, you can discuss the sample size, means, standard deviations. If you're measuring reliability, you can give a estimate of the Cronbach alpha. And then you want to briefly summarize the statistical assumptions. So regressions, correlations, t-tests, NOVAs, they all have assumptions that you should verify, like normality, making sure your data follows a bell-shaped trend, checking for outliers, homogeneity of variance. You want to briefly go through those and present the results. I say briefly because you don't want to focus too much on assumptions. You want to jump right to what are the results of your research questions. So just summarize the assumption checking. Then you want to present the findings for each hypothesis. Okay, and within here, you would give test statistics, mean scores, p-values, betas, any stats that support your argument, and then conclude with a definitive statement for whether you can support the hypothesis or reject. Usually, you connect back to the null hypothesis, so you would say, we reject the null hypothesis or we fail to reject hypothesis. All right, so let's look at a couple examples here. I have a proposal defense, and this is from GCU. So I won't go through the intro information too much because I'm not a content specialist and I don't focus on literature, but we'll go through it. So here we have the introduction, some background information, more background in what is the gap. So what is the gap to be addressed? We have the theoretical and conceptual framework. We have a model of the theoretical and conceptual framework. The problem statement. We have the purpose statement. And these are just copied verbatim. You don't need to rephrase anything. And then research questions and hypotheses. Then we go more into the methods. Okay, so we're using a quantitative research method. You give a justification. This could be a talking point. It doesn't have to be a bullet point, but just have a justification ready. Then what is the design? Quasi-experimental in this case, single group pre-test, post-test design, then justifying those approaches. Then we have a table for all the variables of interest. So the first column is the variable name. Is it an independent or dependent variable? What is the variable being measured by? What is the instrument? And is the variable nominal or interval? It could potentially be ordinal as well. This is a great visual to just summarize all the variables of interest. Then going into the population and sample. So define the population. Who is the target population? What is the location from which you're going to sample from? What was the findings of our analysis? So we needed 85 students at a minimum. More on sampling, what is the sampling procedure? In this case, it's convenience sampling, giving a definition for that. Talking about recruitment and ethics. And then going into the survey instrumentation. So you have a demographic questionnaire, you can include that here, or just summarize what are the questions that will be asked. This is the previously validated survey that's being used. So important information to put here is one, a citation for the tool. What is the format of each question? Does it use a Likert scale? Does it use yes, no formats? Does it fill in the blank? How many items are there in total? What does the Likert scale range from? 1 to 5 here. And identify if it has been proven to be valid and reliable. Here we have the variables of interest and what questions on the survey connect to each of those variables. Here we have a flow chart for the data collection procedures. So you can see recruitment, then actually at the very top, so site authorization, committee and AQR approval, IRB approval, then going into recruitment. So I think this is a little busy of a diagram. I would probably do this in bullet point format or try to condense the amount of words that are in this diagram. It's a little busy. I'll show you another example that I think is better for a presentation. Okay, then we go into the data analysis procedures. So describing how the data is going to be prepped, how's it going to be cleaned, what are you going to present in the results chapter. Remember, this is still a proposal defense. The analyses have not been run at this point. So here we have frequency distributions for demographics, descriptive statistics for the variables of interest, looking at Cronbach alpha for reliability. And then the primary analysis to be used here was a MANOVA. So explaining the assumptions of an ANOVA or a MANOVA. So this person went one by one through every assumption and explaining what needed to be supported. I don't think this level of detail is absolutely necessary. You can just briefly say we checked for the assumptions of a MANOVA. This is what we found. And it could just literally be talking points. You don't have to have it on the slides. Your committee will be more focused on the MANOVA itself, not the assumptions. So this is then going through the interpretation of the MANOVA. What is the significance level? So we need p-values lower than 0.05 for significance. And then references at the very end. Okay, so that's a proposal defense. Here we have a final defense. Different school. This is from Columbia Southern University. You can see their template is very similar to the one I had in the PowerPoint. Again, for the final defense, you will cover the chapter 1, 2, and 3 information, but it will be expedited, a little more condensed. We have the problem statement, we have the purpose statement, we have theory, research method and design, so quantitative, non-experimental, correlational, just have a definition ready for each of those. Define the population, define the sample, and provide the results of the power analysis. Give the research questions and hypotheses. So this is the previous example had a flow chart for data collection. This person did bullet points, which I think just reads better for a presentation. Then discussing how the data is going to be analyzed. What software are you planning to use? SPSS, Stata, SAS. And then we get to the meat of the final presentation, which is the results. Okay, so like I said, just copy and paste your demographic table if you have one, and then discuss any noteworthy trends, anything that is unexpected. Those will be talking points. And give a definitive count of what your sample size is, 84 in this case. Then we have descriptives for the variables of interest. We have the sample size, N, we have the minimum score, the maximum score, the mean or the average, and then the standard deviation. Then this is a slide to check for assumptions. So this assumption is checking for normality, making sure the data follows a bell-shaped trend. That assumption was not supported in this case. So reading the final bullet point here, due to normality not being supported, a Spearman correlation was conducted instead of the originally proposed Pearson correlation. So if you're making any adjustments based on your initial plan, you want to describe that and justify why you followed a different approach. Then we go through the research questions. So here's the research question. We give the results of those research questions and what are the takeaways of the findings. And you want to conclude with a definitive statement about the hypothesis, usually the null hypothesis. So in this case, we said the null hypothesis was partially rejected because we found significance for some findings and non-significance for others. That's why it was a partial rejection. That's kind of a rare situation. You either reject or fail to reject in most situations. Then you go through implications of the findings, so connecting the findings back to previous literature. And then you conclude, and there's usually a question and answer session at the very end. Okay. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. Do we have any questions? You can type them into the chat box. And we'll send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording. Okay, we have a question from Nadine. How do you provide the final analysis of qualitative themes in a final defense? Let me open up the Word document here so I can put the question. Well, for one, I'm not a qualitative expert. We do have a qualitative specialist who does presentations like this, who does webinars. So you may want to ask that question to her specifically when she does one. But in my estimation, it would be very similar to frequency table like this. So you'll have, what are the themes? You'll have like theme, could be right here, theme, and then identify what those specific themes are underneath it. So then you can pinpoint what are the frequency of participants that have perceptions following into those themes. And so I think it would most likely be presented in a frequency and percentage table like this. But I would ask our qualitative expert, Joanna, specifically when she does a webinar. Do you have any other questions? No problem. We have a question from Tracy. So this presentation shows the basics of the dissertation, correct? Are we still doing the paper copies in the APA 7th edition? This presentation was showing the proposal and final defense and kind of how to prepare for those. So this is kind of assuming that your paper's been approved already. So if the dissertation's been approved, the proposal has been approved, then you move to proposal defense. And then once chapter 4 and 5 are approved, move to the final defense. So yeah, you still need to do paper copies for your dissertation. Okay. We have any other questions? All right, so we have a question here. How do you calculate sample size with G power for a population of interest? There's a lot of moving parts there. So you need to know what analysis you're running. And you need to know the effect size, you need to know the power and the alpha level. So I have G power right here. And just to show an example, let's say we're doing an independent t-test. Okay, so you would do, under the t-test family, you would go to differences between two groups, the independent t-test. So you need to figure out a lot of moving parts here. Are you doing a one-tail or two-tail test? What is the effect size? If you hover your mouse over the effect size, you can see it gives thresholds. So what's a small effect, what's a medium, and what's a large. If you don't have literature in your topic to say what effect size to use, usually you just go with a medium effect size, which is going to be the default number that's put in here. So 0.5 is a medium effect. Alpha is usually at 0.05. Powers usually change to 0.80 nowadays. And say we're doing a two-tail test. Once you click calculate, it's going to give you a minimum target. So in this case, for a t-test, the independent t-test, you would need 128 participants, which would be approximately 64 group 1 and 64 group 2. Every power analysis is a little bit different. So, say we're doing a multiple regression, you can see that inputs are different. We still have effect size. We'll go with a medium effect size. Alpha is usually 0.05, power change to 0.8. And then the final box, you need to input how many independent variables you have or how many predictors. So the more predictors you add, the larger the sample size minimum becomes. So it's 92 with 5 predictors. Say we go up to 9, that goes up to 140. Okay. So if you just type G power on Google, it will be one of the first things. Okay, David, you said just a lot to absorb. I know I did go through it quite quickly, but we'll send a copy of the recording to everyone so you can go back and pause and rewind if you need to. Do you have any questions? Anything you'd like me to review again? Just let me know. Okay, we have a question from Susan. Is it recommended to just include main major findings in the defense? Yeah, usually you want to just focus on your research hypotheses. If you're running any ancillary analyses that are not connected to your research questions, you don't necessarily need to report those in the final defense, but that's going to be a very committee-specific question. They will tell you what you need to report on. Okay, we have a question here. Is there any way we can get a copy of the PowerPoints? We can send this webinar template, but I can't send these examples because these are previous clients that we had. Okay, so we'll send you the webinar template, which does have this component right here, which will show you the section headings many schools use nowadays, but it might be slightly different at your specific school. Okay, some great questions. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, well, thanks for joining, everyone. We'll send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording. I do see someone raise their hand just a second ago. Find out who that was. But if you can type your question in. No, I think it went away. Okay, well, come join us for our future webinars. You can see it on our website here. It's probably how you registered today, but just in case, our website, statisticsolutions.com. Go to webinars and then upcoming free dissertation webinars. And you can see what we have on the horizon. And then you can also view recordings at the archive library. So this recording will be up on the website a couple days, and it will be on YouTube as well. So yeah, just let us know if you have any questions, and good luck as you proceed with your papers. Have a great day. Take care.